This is the War Room Roundtable podcast, the show that takes you around the world to share interviews with some of the most successful and relevant businessmen and women on the planet. Hear their stories and get the most important business lessons they've learned on the road to success, and get exclusive advice on how to implement their successes into your life and business. The War Room Roundtable is brought to you by your hosts, Jason Miller, CEO of Strategic Advisor Board, and Phillip Lanos, CEO of Own the Rhythm, and former podcast host for Entrepreneur and Inc. magazine. Welcome to the War Room. Jeannie, it's a pleasure to have you here. How you doing?
I'm great. Thanks for having me today.
Yeah, Jason and I are pleased whenever we speak to entrepreneurs, and in particular, a serial entrepreneur. That's not something we often get. There are some people who find a thing and then they stick with the thing. But some people's appetites are a little greater than that. And we can learn from serial entrepreneurs. And our favorite thing to ask when we're kicking things off, do you, Jeannie, come from a family of entrepreneurs?
I don't. That's a really good question, though. My father tried to start a business when he was young. He owned a gas station and wasn't successful at that. And he said he would never want to own a business again. So I came from a background of, that's what crazy people do. And I have to be 100% transparent. I married into entrepreneurialism. I fell in love with an entrepreneur and we built many businesses together. So that's how I became an entrepreneur, but then couldn't stop once I got started.
Yeah, that seems to be the truth about every entrepreneur. Once they learn how it works, they're like, wait a minute, you can do this?
I can dig that for sure.
Yeah.
So watching that happen as you were growing up, did it make you hesitant at first when you approached entrepreneurship and started seeing it unfold? Or was it right away you said, you know what, that was whatever was going on while I was growing up, but me, I know what I'm capable of? Because sometimes it's just the makeup of who you are as a person that just determines that. So I'm curious about that dynamic there.
That's And growing up, I thought entrepreneurialism was for other people, not just because of my dad's experience, but just it wasn't in the people around me. I grew up in a blue collar family, and you would get a job and stay with a company for a very long time. And that's what I thought I was growing into, was that life. And when I met my husband, he completely opened my mind to the possibility of we can create whatever future we want for ourselves. Whatever we decide to pour into it, that's the result that we will get out of it. And it really opened my mind to things that I never thought were possible for me. So that was a real gift. My husband tells the story all the time of he actually hired me. That's how I met my husband. And he often will tell the story of when he interviewed me, I told him I wanted to be a secretary someday. And he laughed out loud. He didn't even know me. And he laughed at me because he said he knew right then I had more potential than that. But I had a limit. I definitely had a lid on my life growing up. And I needed someone to tell me that I didn't need that lid anymore. But once that lid came off, I couldn't wait to take on the next opportunity and the next opportunity. So that started when I was very young. So I've been in the entrepreneurial world all of my adult life, pretty much.
Wow. Okay. That's big. That really is big. Because after 2,000 conversations, if there's one pattern that has always emerged, it's somewhere. It's always been that the entrepreneurs have said the best business decision they ever made was the partner that they chose, right? Mm-hmm. Because it makes a big difference if they can understand the context with which you see the world through. And having seen that where you were mentally, only to have a conversation and have it sort of remove the veil, if you will, and then for you to go, oh, I know exactly what I can do with this. I think the word is kismet. It's just what a way to meet and have your full potential released. It's just one of those things where you never know why you meet the people that you meet and why they're close to you. And it's part of how Jason and I came across each other as well. There's just something that happens and it only happens, I think, at the rate and number of times that it does in entrepreneurship. Like there's just something about that freedom and how you come across others who are also looking for that freedom and what that creates in terms of impact, abundance. I can go on listing all the great things that come from it as a consequence of that. So I think it's really fascinating. So this is perfect. Now we can transition into, if I have this correctly, there's two companies that we can look at, but one of them is Jeannine Cleaning. Right now, I can assume a number of things of what that means, but I'd like to know more about, like, is this sort of a cleaning services company?
It is. Yeah. We're a home services business. So I met my husband in the restaurant industry. We did that together for 25 years. And we basically retired out of the restaurant business. And Jeannie Cleaning is our retirement business, for lack of a better term. And but it has become so much more than that. It is a residential cleaning business, but we really don't focus on what we do. We focus on the impact that what we do for people, how it in fact affects their lives. And so, yes, we are a cleaning business.
You know, when I first got started in trying to step into the world of entrepreneurship, I was only looking at tech, and oh, that's all I want to do. But the more time I spend in business around business owners, the more I realize how much opportunity and how much impact I left on the table by only thinking about tech. And it comes with age, with maturity in the business. You start to realize how much incredible opportunity is out there in businesses like that, and the kind of impact you can have directly on people. So I think it's really cool that that's your retirement business. It's one of the businesses we decided we're going to do. Like some people, that would be the only thing they'd focus on. But again, this is the mindset and the attitude of a serial entrepreneur, one that understands that it can be done over and over and over again. And it's very on purpose. So was there anything specifically that made you want to go in that direction that turns out wasn't what ended up keeping you in that business?
Yeah, for sure. So coming out of the restaurant business, that's a certain kind of crazy people who are in the restaurant business, and then people who stay in the restaurant business for a couple of decades. But the thing about the restaurant business is it's really 24/7. You're on all the time. And one of the things that I have learned in my life as an entrepreneur is your freedom depends on the team that you build. So if you're going to have any kind of time freedom, you have to have a great team. And fortunately, that's something we've always been able to do, is build a great team. But still, you're still on 24/7 in the restaurant business. So we were drawn to the residential cleaning industry because it is Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. For lack of a better term, it's banker's hours, and we had never had jobs like that, at least not in over 25 years. So to have a business that was just running Monday through Friday, that was our initial draw. Plus, we also knew it's kind of a subscription service. It's something that people sign up for, and they receive that service over and over again on a schedule. So there's less selling involved. We're not selling for every single sale. We create relationships with clients who are with us over a long period of time, which is a lot different than the restaurant industry. Also, in the restaurant industry, you're hustling for every single dollar, where this was more of a not passive income, but more like a passive income business.
I love it. I love it. Before we go any further with the narrative, I want to check in with Jason on some of his thoughts as another serial entrepreneur who keeps it simple and just does business the way business needs to be done, in a very similar spirit to what you're doing. I'd love to just hear his reflections on some of the reasons why you chose that to be the industry.
Yeah, it's like stories like these where, you didn't grow up in that. I mean, I grew up in it. So my father was a farmer, and my mom owned a bunch of different stores in town. She went through the whole VHS, CD, that business, and then clothing stores and restaurants and all these different things growing up as a kid. So I experienced that whole thing as a kid. And for me, it got in my blood, right? So it was kind of the opposite for you. And not to like look back, but it'd be interesting if you hadn't have met who you met, because you were so discouraged from that as a kid, where that would have took you, in life. But everything happens for a reason, of course. But it's always interesting that I think everybody has entrepreneurial spirit. It's just whether it gets unlocked or not. Right. Because when you think about it, if you go back to the beginning of the human race, we were all entrepreneurs. We were out clubbing stuff for food, right? Everybody was an entrepreneur. You had to survive on your own. There was no grocery store, right? So it's like,
Yeah.
We all had to be producers.
Yeah.
We all had to be producers. Yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah, everybody had to produce for their family, so on and so forth. And the big box store was T-Rex. Come eat you up.
Yeah, man.
So I think everybody has the spirit. It's whether you decide to ever find it and unlock it, because as human beings, we're foragers. Now we're just lazy. So
thank you, Netflix.
Yeah, right.
Well, and there are those of us who see that we're solving that problem for other people. They want to stay home and or they want to do other things, and so finding the ways to give people that lifestyle that they're looking for, solving that problem for them, that's a great opportunity. Like what you were talking about, Phillip, there are lots of problems we can solve for people, not just tech problems.
Yes. And I love that the vantage point you looked at through is lifestyle, because at the end of the day, whether you're in the services or product business, it's all tied to some kind of lifestyle, right? How someone wants to feel about the way they move about the world. If someone's looking for marketing and branding and looking for fame, if you will, right? That's a lifestyle. Someone wants to be famous. They walk around and be known, right? If someone's looking to reach a certain monetary number, that in itself, while it does bring some fame, really it's more of like a internal, they need to satiate this, now I'm enough kind of thing, potentially, right? And I might be projecting, but there are things that people are looking to solve internally, and all of them are tied to a lifestyle. So I love that you brought that up. One thing I've been wanting to ask ever since the way we've had a couple of conversations that have been pretty interesting, and it's inspired me to ask another question as sort of like an official stand-in, and that is, how do you define entrepreneurship? When someone says the word entrepreneur to you, because there's business owner, there's freelancers, there's investors. When someone says entrepreneur to you, what are the requirements for that label to actually fit?
Well, yeah. So a lot of people get into business, and basically what they're doing is they're replacing a job, right? And I don't really consider that entrepreneurship. A lot of people just create a new job for themselves. I think entrepreneurs are people who create something bigger than themselves. And they create something completely new that wasn't there before. And then that thing kind of takes on a life of its own. So entrepreneurs are creators. Of course, we come in all different personality types and things like that, but we are people with a vision, and we make that vision happen. And I get inspired when I hang out with them, because with other entrepreneurs, because I just love the variety of creativity and vision that's out there in the world. It gives us so much diversity when it comes to business.
Have you ever given thought to the idea of retiring? Look, officially, like even now, even though you had a business, so your retirement, all it did was lead to more business. So I know that didn't work out. But what do you do when you start giving serious thought to retirement? Is it usually in a good place or in a bad place?
I've asked myself that question many times, because everyone around me is retiring right now at the age that I'm at. All of my closest friends, all of my family are in retirement mode. And I don't see myself retiring.
Yeah, I suspected it.
Yeah, I love what I do, and it's what I do for fun. I get such joy out of creating and working with people and building new things that I just can't see myself completely stopping at some point. Of course, we all want more time freedom. And that's one thing that entrepreneurs can achieve if they have their systems and their team in place. And definitely I want that someday. But yeah, I don't think I'll ever completely retire. And I think for me, that's kind of like that's the end of me. If I stop creating, I would lose my zest for life. I think that living and creating go together for me.
Yeah.
I will say I've tried and it didn't work out at least 4 times. So
really,
so you just
like
I swear I'm gonna retire.
What's an example of trying and then getting?
Well, I tried to go fishing a bunch. That didn't work out. I've tried putting people in place to like take over the companies and then exit them, because I've exited quite a few companies and sold them to where then I didn't have that dopamine hit every day. Right? And then it's like, okay, I got to start something else now. Right. Let me start a magazine or do something. Right. I mean, whatever.
Just start a magazine. No big deal. But it's a really important point. It's that reward piece that drives us. And, it feels good. So we want to do it again and we want to do it again. So I probably would have that very similar experience for sure, Jason.
What I love about this conversation is that it ties in something I saw last night. I was watching sort of, he's pretty controversial right now for many reasons, but Elon was speaking with Ron Barron about sort of the state of some of his companies. And one of the things somebody had asked him, like, how do you stay encouraged to start it, to keep a company running or start one? And he was like, well, if you need encouragement to start a company, you probably shouldn't start one. And what I'm seeing in what both of you were saying, and this is a really interesting observation, is you would much rather launch a company than sit back and watch a Netflix series. Like, that much is for certain. You would literally rather do anything other than that's related to business. Like, you would much rather be involved in some capacity in running or starting or creating something than sitting there watching a series. It's not to say you're above watching a series. It's just, if you had to pick and choose, I'm going to go start something.
I would rather shove needles in my than watch Netflix.
And that's an important distinction, right? Because Netflix is supposed to be a lot like social media, some kind of dopamine mechanism, right? Somewhere where we can get off on the idea of like, this is how you live, baby. And yet for the two of you, you're like, no. I want to be out there moving, shaking, closing deals, creating impact. That's literally, I couldn't care what's happening in Game of Thrones. Are you kidding me?
I probably have never, ever watched an episode.
And again, it's not that you're above it. It's just where you get your sense of fulfillment is absolutely bottom. And I think that's the most important thing, because we've had many conversations. Not only have I had 2,000, with different entrepreneurs, VCs, business owners, but I've also ingested a lot of consumed a lot of podcasts, and they always miss highlighting such an important point of what really makes an entrepreneur. Because at the end of the day, this show's mission is not only to help other entrepreneurs, whether they're senior or just starting out, avoid the arrows in the back, as Jason likes to say, avoid mistakes, gain benefit from the experience. But also, I think one of the greatest missions we could do is help people determine whether or not this is what they want, if this is for them, right? And if you would much rather watch Netflix, like truly at the bottom of your heart, as opposed to going in there and starting something and working it out and thinking it through, then that's who you are. And there's nothing wrong with that. Because there's plenty to do in the world, and there are plenty of people who want to do it, just like you, Jeannie, and you, Jason, who are gung-ho, wake up in the morning and go, all right, well, I've got enough time to start another thing or close off something I was working on yesterday before I get my day started. And not many people think that way. The people who think about Netflix are like, God, I got to get up again today. I would much rather watch Netflix. And like you
Yeah,
said,
and I do
that's
find
our benefit, right?
right. It is. Yeah. I'm glad there are people that, it takes all kinds of people to make the world go around. If we were all entrepreneurs, it would be a war room. We would be killing each other. Right. The world can't support
Ooh.
us all to be entrepreneurs. However, I have talked to many entrepreneurs who catch themselves getting pulled into doing things that are unproductive, like too much television time, too much social media time, because they're overwhelmed by their business and they're maybe a little afraid of taking a risk. They've got some fear going on. So it's just easier to hide from that and spend time doing things that are not productive to their business. And then they don't understand why their business isn't moving forward. And a lot of times it is just, how are you spending your time? How are you starting and ending your day? It makes such a big difference. And I think we all sometimes get caught in that. We might get a little down about something that's happened and we pull away from our business, and we kind of need somebody to wake us up and say, hey, turn your eyes away from the screen, focus on your business, and it'll bring back those rewards, because whatever you put into your business comes back to you. You have to pour into it. So I have seen entrepreneurs get caught in that, the Netflix vortex or the entertainment vortex. But a lot of times it's because they don't want to deal with a challenge, or they're afraid of the next risk that they have to take. And it's just easier,
See, this is great, because this highlights sort of, I imagine it's just a taste of what your consulting work is like outside of the other things that you do, getting involved with people and helping them see like, hey, look, there's nothing wrong with it. Everybody falls off, but are you going to get back on? Right.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the question. Because
Right.
the problem isn't going to go away if you don't do anything about it. Lord knows I have to hear that on a regular basis. No, it's truly fascinating that you brought that up. And for me, that's an indication of just the way that you think and the way that you operate, and why it is that you're an entrepreneur, because you have the self-awareness to see that. So for me, I think one of the greatest things that we could leave behind is something like that. But if you had to rephrase it and say, bottom line, this is what you need to know if you're either thinking about going into entrepreneurship or are facing an obstacle and might be in a vortex, right? What is that thing that you tell yourself or tell a client? Just a brief of it, because obviously there's not time for a whole consulting session and it's too general. But if there was a fundamental principle that you think can make things work, the key, if you will, to the ignition, what would you say that is?
Well, it's kind of two things. It's hard to do one thing, but it's knowing where you want to go and then moving in that direction. But the hardest thing is the first thing that you do. It's like putting on your gym shoes before you go to the gym. You have to do that one thing to do the next thing. And so I often will tell other entrepreneurs who are stuck is to look at where you want to go. And then what is that first small step that you have to take in that direction? And that's where the momentum begins, so that you can start to grow your business. And most people just struggle with that first step. Like, I don't know what to do next. Well, do one thing, just one thing, one small thing that moves you in that direction. And then they start to create momentum. So I encourage people to it's like a map. You wouldn't go somewhere unless you knew where you wanted to go. You need a map to know what direction to head in. And a lot of people just say, well, I want to start a business. That's, well, why? What is that going to do for you? And having that, I know definitively where I want to go, and then doing that one thing that moves you in that direction. And I think that sets entrepreneurs apart, don't you, Jason? That it's the action taking piece. A lot of people can talk about, I'm going to have a business someday. I want to have this business someday or whatever. But I think that's another thing that sets entrepreneurs apart, is that they're action takers.
It's the do that or get off the pot, right? I
mean, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
It really is. You're either going to do it or you're not. I mean, and I'm just the all in kind of person, right? So if I get an idea and it's like, I got this idea. So you got two choices. you just kind of kick it around and you're going to get nowhere, or you just go all in, full bore, nonstop. And if it fails, you learned a lesson, right? So, because inevitably, I've probably had 8 failures in a row before. So, right. But that's just part of it. It's not, there's no secret to it. It's just a part of it. And if that's not something you can compartmentalize and handle in your brain, well, then it's not for you. And it's like you said, you'd have a bunch of T-Rexes running around in the world if everybody was an entrepreneur. So.
Absolutely.
for sure.
The best example I've always pointed out to people who sit around and wait and that kind of thing, wax poetic about entrepreneurship, and then they go and get a job and go, I'm smarter than my boss. Like, well, what's going on? It's like, well, number one, yeah, you're smarter because otherwise you wouldn't be there. Who wants to hire someone that isn't better than them, right? Like that's rule number one. And if you're feeling underpaid, well, since when was it ever good business to overpay? I mean, you could be fair, but you're not going to overpay unless they're truly bringing value. And then if they are, it's not overpaying, right? So it's funny how that thing gets lost in the sauce for a lot of people who end up staying as employees and only waxing poetic about one day having a business. And it's as simple as you don't have to be that smart to take action, but you do have to be quick on your feet to make appropriate actions when necessary. And that's the difference. And that's the intuition and the instinct of a real hunter, a real one. And so I think that's one of the biggest things we can outline here on this conversation. Before I give the red carpet to you, I just want to take a quick shout out to one of our supporters for this episode in particular that made it possible. And in our community, we have a company by the name of Scale with Social Selling, run by Terry Foster, I believe. And if you've ever looked at your sales calendar and thought, and this is for particular people who live by their calendar and have all these prospects, and they're like, wow, my calendar's booked, only to find every single call with somebody who didn't even belong on your calendar in the first place. Well, Scale with Social Selling has developed a program and a method to make sure that whatever does land on your calendar is actually supposed to be there, as opposed to just having a full calendar, which ties back to sort of the action steps that we were talking about in this episode, right? This is appropriate action, filling your calendar in the right way, and they can do that for you. So go ahead and go to try.scalewithsocialsellingsystem.com. Let them know that the War Room sent you, and they'll take care of you. With that, in fact, they'll give you a 20% discount if you tell them the War Room sent you. So with that said, coming back, Jeannie, if people wanted to get a hold of you and wanted to get in touch with you, not only to learn more about you and follow you, but maybe even get some consulting from you, where would you have them go?
So I do have a new website. It's JeannieHenderson.com. And that's Jeannie spelled like I dream of Jeannie. And they can definitely reach me there or connect with me on LinkedIn. And you can check out my residential cleaning business, and that's JeannieCleaning.com. I would love to connect with anyone who's looking for some help. I love to help startup businesses. That's one of my favorite things to do. So I would love to connect.
Right on. Now the grand finale, what we talked about earlier before we hit record. If you could have invited anybody, your pick of the litter, some time to be here today to talk about the things that we covered, whether the nature of entrepreneurship as a whole, who do you wish was here and why them?
I love to talk with young people. So I would, first off, I would have liked the young me to hear me talk, because I would not have believed that this is the life I would have led. And I feel incredibly blessed. So I would like the young me, but I would like my grandchildren to hear this, because I do believe generationally things get lost. We are known by our children, and we're known by our grandchildren, but our great grandchildren just kind of remember us. And then by the next generation, our name is gone. Like nobody knows us. And so I would like my grandchildren, my great grandchildren to hear this and be inspired that they can be anything that they want to be. no matter how they start their life, we are all in control of the direction that we head in.
Nobody's gonna forget now because this will be on the web forever.
Yeah.
I will be on the interweb forever.
There you go.
Uh,
Good or bad, right?
Yeah, good or bad, but a delightful time for sure. Thank you.
Yeah.
yeah, no, it's tradition around here for Jason to close us out. So I'm going to let him do that. But it really has been a pleasure. And I appreciate you coming from the heart for this conversation.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for being here. I always say, we all have the same 168 hours. You took 33 here with us today, on a Friday out of your business day. And we appreciate you doing that and sharing some knowledge with our audience.
Bye, Jeannie. Thank you.
Thank
Cheers.
you so much.
Cheers.
Thanks for listening to the War Room Roundtable with your hosts, Jason Miller and Phillip Lanos. Please leave your feedback and visit strategicadvisorboard.com to get the latest and greatest business advisement on the planet. Follow us on social media for updates, and always remember, if you can dream it and believe it, then you can go achieve it. We'll see you in the next episode.